So far, we have explored the variety of stress and dug deeper into triggers, those sparks that set stress into motion. Whether external, like a demanding boss, or internal, like the belief that I'm not doing enough, triggers are where stress begins. But stress doesn't just stay in one place, it moves, often showing up in different areas of our lives. For example, a tough conversation at work trigger might not stay at workplace stress. It could show up later as physical tension, emotional overwhelm, or even frustration in your relationships at home. Stress is like a ripple effect. It starts in one spot and spreads outwards, touching different areas of your life. Let's break this down into five domains where stress shows up, and I'm sure some of these will feel familiar for you. First, let's start with your body. Stress often shows up physically, even if the trigger wasn't physical at all. Let's look at some examples, right? You're stuck in a traffic for about an hour, which is an external trigger. And by the time you get home, your shoulders and neck are stiff. Another example, you've been worrying all day about a project deadline, internal trigger, and now your stomach feels upset and you've got a pounding headache. Let's look at another one. Maybe you're not even aware of the trigger, just the fact that your maid is on leave and you've been running around handling everything that has left you feeling completely drained. Stress can show up in the following physical ways, just to make it easier for us: tension in your muscles, headaches and migraines, digestive issues or loss of appetite, fatigue that makes everything feel harder. Something for you to consider is sometimes you may not connect the dots immediately, but your body often picks up on stress long before your mind does. Think of it as your body's way of saying, "Hey, I'm carrying something really heavy here." Now, let's talk about stress in your mind. This is when stress shows up in your thoughts and emotions. Let's look at a few examples. Your neighbor keeps playing really loud music late at night. External trigger, and you start thinking, why aren't people considerate? Now you're feeling irritable and anxious. Another one, you've set a high standard for yourself at work. Internal trigger, and the thought of not meeting it makes your mind spin with worry. Or maybe you are replaying a past conversation, wondering if you said something wrong. How often does it keep you awake at night? Stress can show up in your mind as these following ways: racing thoughts or overthinking, difficulty focusing or making decisions, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or sad. One thing for you to consider over here is internal triggers often amplify psychological stress. The way we interpret a situation can make it feel much bigger than it is. And once your mind is in overdrive, it's really hard to slow it down. Next, let's look at how stress affects your behavior, especially what you do and don't do in response to stress. Some of the examples that I can think of is you've had a stressful week at work, external trigger, and by the end of the week, you find yourself binge watching TV instead of tackling your to do list. Another example that comes to mind is you're feeling anxious about an upcoming exam, internal trigger, so you keep scrolling through social media instead of studying. Or maybe stress has a completely opposite effect on you. Your stress pushes you to overwork, cleaning the house from top to bottom, even when you're so exhausted. Let's look at how stress shows up in behaviors. One is procrastination or avoidance. Two is overworking or being unable to rest. Three is comfort eating or skipping meals altogether. Four is binge watching, excessive social media use, or other forms of escapism. What I would like you to consider over here is behavioral stress isn't about willpower or discipline. It's often your way of coping with overwhelming feelings. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to creating some healthy habits for yourself. Stress doesn't just stay inside us, it often spills into our interactions with others. This is what we call as social stress. Some examples for you to maybe relate to this is you've had a frustrating day at work, external trigger, and when your friend calls to chat, you snap at them without meaning to. Another thing, you are feeling unsure about how people perceive you at family gathering, internal trigger, so you avoid the event altogether. Or maybe you feel pressure to adapt to everyone's expectations, bending over backwards to keep the peace. Stress in social spaces can show up as avoiding people or isolating yourself, difficulty communicating your needs, feeling overly adaptable, always trying to please others to avoid conflict. Something for you to consider about social stress is social stress often grows out of unspoken feelings or unmet expectations. Sometimes just pausing to reflect on what you need in a situation can ease the tension. Finally, let's talk about relational stress, the kind that shows up in your closest relationships, whether it's with your partner, family, or friends. Let's look at some examples to understand this better. You've had a long day managing household chores, external trigger, and when your partner asks, "What's for dinner?" you feel an explosion of frustration. Another one, you're worried about not being enough for your loved ones, internal trigger, and that worry makes you withdraw emotionally. Another one, some small disagreement keeps snowballing into a bigger argument, leaving both of you feeling distant. How often has this happened? Stress can show up relationally in different ways. One is frequent arguments and miscommunications, feeling unsupported or misunderstood, emotional withdrawal or shutting down. One thing for us to understand over here is relational stress often combines both external triggers like busy schedules and internal triggers like feeling of insecurity. Recognizing both can help you build stronger, healthier connections. Like we have seen, stress rarely stays in one place. It's common for stress triggered in one area to ripple into others. For example, a disagreement with your boss at work, external trigger. This might lead to tension in your body, physical stress, racing thoughts, psychological stress, snapping at loved ones, relational stress, and binge eating some ice cream later, behavioral stress. Stress may feel overwhelming at times, but understanding how it moves through your life gives you the tools to better manage it. By recognizing your triggers and where stress shows up, you're already taking steps towards greater self awareness. In the next module, we'll explore how we respond to stress and what happens when we are facing the stress. For now, give yourself a moment to reflect.